Hi, my name's Rob Austin from Interworks. I'm going to talk to you today about Tableau version 9 and the 3 new level of detail calculations that it's got to show. So these are fixed, include, and exclude. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a demonstration of a problem that we might use fixed to fix. So let's put subcategory up there. Let's throw profit into the mix and just sort these descending. So we can very quickly see that we've got 3 unprofitable subcategories. It's not quite as easy to see how many profitable categories that we've got. So let's create a quick calculation to highlight those. So I'm just going to create a Boolean for profitability. So, the new editor for calculated fields is just awesome. So if that's greater than equal to 0, then we're going to show that in a different color. And when we OK that, we can see that this calculation sits down here in the measures area. I'm just going to drag that up, drop it into color, and we've separated these out by profitability. But what I really want to know is a quick view of how many of these subcategories are unprofitable. So I could try rearranging this to get that, but as soon as I move this subcategory out to try and summarize it, let's turn this into a distinct account, for example. You can now immediately see that it's bracketed everything together, so we're now just looking at the profitability of all of the subcategories combined and not one at a time. So we may be able to resolve this with some table calculations. That's going to be complicated and will end up taking quite a while, but we can go into our calculation and amend it using fixed. So if I edit this calculation, and I'm going to first of all open some curly brackets and use the magic keyword fixed, and we're going to fix it at the level of subcategory. So fixed subcategory, you then need a colon, and for profit here we have to define the level of aggregation, which as before is going to be sum of profitability greater than or equal to 0. Close the curly brackets. So let's OK that one. And we'll see here we've got an issue, but the main thing is that this profitable calculation has now appeared in dimensions, whereas before it was in measures. So let's drag that in here. We can now use this as if it were a real database dimension, so that we can slice our data up by it and create segments. So that was fixed for looking at a specific level of detail. Now let's take a look at include, which helps us delve deeper into the granularity. So for our next example, I'm again going to use subcategory, and let's put some sales value in there this time. And rather than sum of sales, I'm going to change it to average. And here we can clearly see what the average for each of our subcategories is. And back in version 8 we added in this total all using, which if we now add in our column grand total, we can see that our underlying data total is 215 for average sales. So our average order value is 215. In here we can now do total all using, and we can change this to be the visible average. So that's the average of everything that we can see as a subcategory, and we get the same if we added a reference line. So this value here is now about 430. But what if we wanted to have this value of 430 averaged in a single bar so that we could just see it on one line? As soon as we take subcategory away here, we're back to this 215 value that we had before. So now we can create a calculation based on this. And if I take sales, create a calculated field, and let's call this average sales per order. So this time we're going to be wanting our average sales. So we're going to open up some curly brackets, and this time we're going to use include. And we're going to be including the subcategory. for average sales. We can close our curly brackets and we can OK that one. So now we've got our average sales per order. Let's just drag this up, and you can see by default it's picked sum. So let's go ahead and change that to an average. So now we've got this value of 430 that we intended to have, and over here we can see we've got 215. That was include for looking at things at a more granular level. Now let's take a look at exclude, which does the opposite. So this time we're going to use exclude, and we're going to use it to answer a slightly different question. So once again, let's take average per subcategory. And using table calculations, we could quite easily determine the difference from the visible average, which is about 415 using table calculations. But what's harder to do is calculate maybe the difference from that value of 215, which is the real average underlying order value. So let's go ahead and create a calculated field, and we'll call this average underlying. And we're going to use exclude. So right in here we can say exclude subcategory, and we're going to want average sum of sales. So let's take a look at that. Drag that into our visualization. Now we can see we've got this underlying value of 215. So if we make a quick modification to this now, we'll call it variation from average. And now we can just go ahead and subtract our original value, so average sales, away from our excluded subcategory level of detail calculation. Not forgetting, of course, to put in your level of aggregation. So let's put our new calculation back into our visualization, which now gives us the answer to our question, how far from the underlying average sales value am I per subcategory? So what I'm going to do next is use both include and exclude in this visualization. And we've modified the problem to be how far from the average category sale am I per subcategory. Because, it doesn't make much sense to be comparing our machines here down with our labels and our fasteners. So the first thing I'm going to do is put in category. And we can now see that this actually does what we want by default by adding in category, purely using that exclude function. And let's just take a look and see, because you could be excused for not really knowing what's going on here. So let's make a copy of our calculation, and we'll just take a look at what that average value is coming out as. Yeah, we'll call that average value. Okay, that one. And if we just drop this into label, we can see that it's actually comparing to different average values across these. So this is being compared to the category. Let's just show this one. Furniture. This is being compared to office supplies and being compared to technology. So that's good, that's what we're after. And if we wanted to remove our category, we could easily do that. But it's still split into those sections, so then we'd have to do some further work to try and maybe sort this descending or whatever we wanted to do. An alternative way of doing that would be we could remove category, which takes us back to using that average across the board. So let's duplicate this again, and this time we're going to use include, and we're going to use category. And close our curly brackets. Okay, so this one is variation from category average. Let's go ahead and OK that one and drop it up here. And obviously we need to amend our values there. Let's go ahead and put the mark labels in, and we can see that these are now showing the differences from the average per category rather than the average overall. And we can go ahead and sort by that if we want. So maybe this is a more relevant calculation to use in this case. So that's just an example of how you can combine include and exclude in one visualization to pinpoint the exact KPI which you'd like to see. I want to thank you very much for watching, and as always, if I can be of any help, just drop me a line, and I hope you found it useful.